Hello friends, and welcome back to Pods of the Multiverse. We're an unofficial D&D podcast where four friends play D&D, and this is our Season 5 recap. But first, we would like to share some announcements.
It's just good news, really, is what it is. For us.
For
good
us.
News for us. Yeah.
For us, yeah.
Yeah.
So, we are going to very soon start releasing our Table Talk bonus content into the main feed retroactively for all the stuff that we have recorded over the past year and a half, all of our recaps and bonus games and all kinds of stuff like that, because we are making the decision to close up our Patreon.
Yeah, that's great news.
So thank you to the everybody who has contributed. It's been a really great year and a half. We are continuing to make episodes, but going forward, we're just kind of changing the pacing of how we're doing this. Instead of the weekly grind of an episode in your podcatcher every single week, we're going to be producing these more like episodes of TV shows and producing whole seasons at a time, dropping them in the feed when they're ready. So you might see a few weeks or months even of gaps in between seasons, but the seasons are coming. Season 6 is underway. You'll see that early next year.
That's right.
Another thing I want to say is that we're closing down the Patreon because we want to move to a model that we think reflects who we are as people and as creators. So coming soon, and you'll probably hear all about it in the intros and outros of Season 6, we'll have effectively a tip jar on our website that we would be always appreciative if you went and contributed to, but all of our content will be free. Nothing in our Discord will be gate-kept anymore. We just want it to be an open, fun community where we talk about nerdy bullshit.
And I just want to comment on how I think this is going to let us produce better quality stuff overall. It's actually amazing to me whenever I think about it that we were able to sustain this sort of pace and quality of production for as long as we did for an entire fucking year.
Yeah,
Crazy. Mostly thanks to COVID shutdowns, but...
Go us, but, you know...
It was a lot. And actually, now that we're moving everything to the main feed, you can hear about it in a table talk we did around our production process, where we deep dive how fucking stupid we were for doing this.
But this is going to improve our quality overall, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we often record until 11 p.m. midnight, and I think Scala's editing saves the listener from it, but there are times where we tire out a little bit towards the trail end of the episodes. So this'll give us more latitude to pace out our recording sessions, which is really where we traditionally have been hit the hardest for time crunch pressures, I think.
Yeah. And also on top of the boost in quality, we're also going to be kind of branching out a little bit, doing stuff other than full seasons. Some bonus episodes here and there, a one shot, whatever. When we're not really constrained to a season every 13 weeks, it's going to give us some room to stretch out. So we're really excited for that.
New characters, new shitty accents.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, speak for me. Yeah, you don't have any shitty accents. I get you. You're right. Correct.
Scala is a professional.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess without further ado, let's recap Season 5.
Let's get into it.
If you're tuning in this week, then you've just listened to all of Season 5.
Or not, and why are you listeing to this?
Go back and listen to
Season 5.
Listen to Season 5.
Major spoilers for the second season in Theros. Let's talk about it.
Let's do it.
Okay.
You're the DM. You decide where we start with this. You won't be the benevolent DM for another year, so enjoy this power while you have it.
One would argue he's never been the benevolent DM, but that's...
Oh, come on.
Yeah. No,
come on.
No,
come on.
He never gave
All
us
right.
2 blobs in a combat, so...
Yeah, exactly.
I'm never going to live that down.
Never, ever. All right, let's get this show on the road. And this season's road went through the underworld.
Yeah.
So, starting with setting, the underworld was always something I wanted to thoroughly explore. And honestly, it wound up being the bulk of season 2, mostly because of, challenge rating or like difficulty. Obviously, you can't put like level 3, 4, 5 characters through the kind of stuff you went through. But at the same time, if it was a party of like 11, 12, 13, a lot of this, it would have taken like every combat being like boss level or harder combats for it to seem tough. So I think that was a big part. I was like, when is the party like ready for this sort of adventure? And it happened to line up with like, yeah, straight away into season 2. Let's do it. And I just went from there.
And remind me, Theros is a setting book, which means it technically scales for all levels, or is there a recommended level range for Theros adventures?
Yeah, it doesn't really say, it doesn't really give recommendations like that. The setting guide is pretty loose. It gives a lot of like descriptions of things, and the underworld is fairly detailed, is a fairly detailed part of the book. Each of the wards have, you know, maybe like a third of a page or a half of a page of description and different flavor and things. And then like a sizable part of the bestiary is demons and other creatures that you might encounter.
I guess on the subject, I want to talk more about the underworld, but this is as good as a segue as ever on the subject of combat. As a player, I loved what we did this season for combat. It felt like multiple occasions where I was a little worried for the party. And then other occasions where like it was almost a meme because the dice went so well. But like, Andy, how do you feel about where the combat, like, did you feel like you had to calibrate throughout the season and change stat blocks as we were going and learning? Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Never would have noticed that, at least as a listener and player.
Yeah, so, you know, I don't know if anybody else got this sense, but we sort of hinted at a flavor in Theros Season 1 that I think really took shape in Season 2 of this, like, metal band album cover vibe of D&D.
Hell yeah.
Which, like, not only Theros itself sort of gets to express, but, like, the underworld is like just this flavor that is so like brutal and violent, but also like really over the top and fun. And I mean, these first couple of games, like the fucking satyr combat and everything in the stadium, like I was just really happy with how all of these combats ended up going flavor wise, which sort of only further contributed to the overall feeling of the underworld.
Yeah, a lot of that like blood and, you know, fire and ruined columns and stuff, that all translated really well.
And the random encounters, the fucking minotaurs and the Mad Max, like all of those were so good. And then when we first get to the
fucking
underworld,
harpies coming out of the sky and stuff.
They just it was super good. And arcing out the season, Andy, did you always plan, like, where are we netted out in terms of time spent in each section of the underworld? Is that roughly what you had outlined when you planned the season? Are you happy with how that turned out?
I would say so. Overall, I had a lot looser plans for the sort of play-by-play of the season. And I know this is something we talked about a lot the further we got into Eberron and in a lot of our table talks about how, like, all of our DMing styles have sort of accommodated this, like, 12-episode formula and all of the sort of plot that, as DMs, we want to cover, but feel like we're telling a well-paced story and, like, a fun and entertaining game. And so a lot of these, especially the combats, I had like pages more of stuff that we could have or could have not even covered. You know, a lot of other random encounters and other scenes, a lot like what spring to mind are like when you guys found the ruined Xenagos shrine. Like these sort of flavor moments where you could have stumbled upon this thing or that thing, but it wouldn't have really made like, it wouldn't have really made or broken. It wouldn't have. It wouldn't have really derailed the plot in
3
in a major way. But there's just like so much flavor to be had. Like, something I was really inspired by looking back at our first 4 seasons was how lived in and vibrant Ravnica felt.
Mm-hmm.
And even though the underworld is literally not a lived-in place...
Unlived in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is this ancient place. And
the people that have been there have... And I think, like, the guest stars really embody this, which is, like, they've been there. They have routines. Like, they, even if their routine is dying, like, it is lived in, but it's unlived in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the Stadium of Dishonor really puts that on display really well. I think you did a good job in describing those things, as well as the awesome work that our guest stars did. Helped paint that picture.
Absolutely. Just sort of talking about that second arc of the season, it just helped flesh out so much more of not only what was going on with sort of the main quest. There was obviously a lot of lore, for the PCs to find, but just all of the additional lore and the background stories with the guest players, and just sort of getting a sense of, like, character stories that describe the world rather than the world sort of ambiguously describing these character archetypes, which I think was, like, granted, is a trapping and a pitfall simultaneously of Theros. It's like you're talking about these big concepts of story and character elements, and it can be sort of hard to really make it seem like the individual player at the table, like, is the most important thing.
And shout out to Santana, Chris, and Alexa
Absolutely.
for joining us.
Of course.
Ridiculous.
For those 2 episodes. Incredible stuff.
Heads for Heliod, Glory to Farrakha, and whatever sound
I'm a
makes.
goat.
Yeah.
Could not have imagined a better 2 episodes. Oh my
so
god.
Good. So good. Yeah.
Yeah. And then to immediately follow that up with new characters in the following episode, too.
Oh my god.
We're getting a lot of perspectives this season.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we should talk about characters in general, but I think I alluded to it in the mainline content of, like, the background of Estrella. I mean, I should probably just mention it here where that is, which is our first game ever, as this group of us before we started the podcast.
Yeah, this is our OG home game.
Home game, yep.
Yeah, I played like 7 games, bought a horse, and got the fuck out of there as a differently named.
Got killed.
I got killed as a result of Scala's character. Yeah, that's the whole like vengeance on the mind of Estrella is actually pointed at Scala. What was that character's name?
Ichniax.
Ichniax. Damn you.
Ichniax, a follower of Ashiok.
Of Ashiok.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I was aware of that. I mean, my character was kind of spacey.
Oh, he's so good.
I didn't even actually know Ichniax's real name until, like, significantly weeks into the game.
That was me playing my character.
Of course, but just
also,
for the other players at the table to not even know a piece of information like
Jimmy's
that.
character was Everett on steroids in regards to amnesia.
I was a satyr, the Spheros the satyr, born yesterday, literally.
Yep.
Follower of Farrakha, because that's who gave me life.
Wait a minute. What if Dust is just Spheros way in the future?
I don't think that works.
No?
No, Spheros wasn't an actual goat.
Yeah, Dust was a literal goat.
Right.
Yeah. Spheros was Nyxborn. And then Zephos also played a part in that home game.
Yeah, Zephos was also one of the central foes of that home game.
Yeah. Cool tie-ins.
A lot of tie-ins. Even though nobody listening would get them. But
That's okay.
there you go.
There's
There's the context.
There's a bit of deep lore.
Yeah,
Pods
the
of
deep
lore.
Multiverse deep lore.
Multiverse
Deep Lord.
That's
TM,
right. It'll
TM.
end up on a wiki that we write someday.
Shout out to Beak, the Sky Coach cab driver. There's some more deep lore for you.
Yeah, more deep lore. Well, let's talk about the characters that matter, which are the ones for this season. I guess, Scala, I mean, for the people that didn't listen to our bonus content, I'm going to talk a little bit about Paravex, like, in terms of their genesis, and then we can talk about character arcs.
Yeah, I mean, sure. As we may have mentioned in bonus content, Andy has always pitched Theros to us as an exploration of the hero's journey, which very appropriate for a, antique Grecian setting. And Andromedy was, my character from our first season, was a embodiment of the wise guide and helpful protector, an archetype who appears in the early half of the hero's journey. And then Paravex was supposed to be a counterpoint to that, the representation of temptation by the adversary that happens in the unknown world. So I wanted Paravex to come in and represent the sort of adversary perspective of anti-theism in a world that is dominated by gods. And I wanted them to be, a lot of times when temptation by the adversary happens in these archetypal stories, it's very clear cut,
Mm-hmm.
Would you like power? Would you like to rule the world? And the hero is obviously supposed to say no. But Paravex was supposed to come in with do you want to change the world for the better? I'm not looking to dominate anyone. I'm committed to the principle of truth. And that sets me at odds with the gods, who Paravex sees as a thief of mortal potential, of mortal dreams. And so that was the thing I wanted to bring, something that would provide an actual difficult temptation for the party to have to answer to.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, and you portrayed it very feelingly, like a really multifaceted representation of the other side, the antithesis to Andromedy, basically. Yeah, I thought you did. I mean, it worked on Gran.
It worked on, I don't want to say it worked on Clicks, but it certainly provided a great canvas for me to play Clicks this season.
Yeah.
Pretty awesome.
Thank you.
You literally went through a level squish and back. But other than that, what would you say, if anything, was Paravex's character growth?
Well, I think it has to come in the conversation Paravex had with the founder of their school of philosophy, Eurimedes, in episode 8, which was a very, very impactful scene, just both for me as the person playing the character and also for Paravex. And I think Paravex has, was exiled from Meletus when they were, in their 20s, and they've been wandering sort of the outskirts of the ruined places of Theros for many years, and they've always been very single-minded in, by any means necessary, I'll strike down the gods. But I think that conversation changed their perspective, and they had this realization, it's not enough to, tear down one false idol if another's going to take its place. It always has to be about the mortals taking their power back. And I think that was what caused Paravex's character growth. And I think I was very lucky that Andy sort of extended me the hand in becoming like a paladin of Elspeth, or a warlock of Elspeth, rather, who is like the embodiment of this idea that mortals can choose their own destinies and decide what they want the fate of Theros to be themselves. And I thought that was a really cool opportunity, and I'm glad that it got put in front of me, and I think it really gave a satisfying button to Paravex's campaign arc.
Definitely.
Now, would you say that Eurimedean philosophy would extend to, like, people and kings? Or is it really more theologically concerned? Like, is it limited in that scope?
Euripidean philosophy, from my perspective, from the 2 lines of flavor text and the 1 paragraph of nonsense in the Theros book, it's more about, truth as the ultimate virtue. And this is something that, like, Socrates actually championed, right? The only good in the world is knowledge, and the only evil in the world is ignorance. And so the reason that Euripideans find themselves opposed to gods is because their power is an illusion. It's generated by the faith of people, and instead people could claim this power for themselves, have faith in themselves, maybe even harness Nyx for their own ends, if they would stop believing in the sort of false icons of the gods. They're less interested, I think, in the nature of authority, right? I don't think Paravex takes issue with, Paravex doesn't take issue with Cymede because she's a queen. They take issue with her because she and Anax were responsible for persecuting Paravex's associates and friends and things of that nature. But I don't think, unless the ruler of a polis had put themselves in a position where they were spreading lies or teaching falsehoods, I don't think Paravex would necessarily, oppose authority. It's more opposing, deceit and false ideas.
I mean, I guess I just want to ask this question because I was going to not ask it, but now you've given a little more detail as to how Paravex thinks about authority and in the context of mortal versus theological. What do you think Paravex would think of Wink and vice versa? Because we know how they think about Andromedy, but I'm curious about Wink.
That's interesting.
Right? I normally wasn't going to ask it, but then Jimmy brought that out of you, and I was like, actually, this is kind of interesting. I want to know.
I don't think Paravex would think super highly of Wink. And I think it comes down to the fact that Wink is sort of a yarn spinner. They're a bard's bard. They exaggerate the truth. They're about telling a story that people can get behind, and Paravex would rather deal with the concrete truths that Wink doesn't seem to be overly concerned with. So yeah, I don't think they would be at each other's throats the way I think Paravex and Andromedy would be, but I don't think Paravex would think all that highly of Wink.
Before we move on to Gron and Clix, I also want to bring up, as far as Paravex's arc is concerned, that at several points I tried to give Paravex other outs after their level squish. Specifically the notion of allying themselves with Ashiok. If you had any thoughts on your final decision versus that one, Scala?
When I created this character, I knew Ashiok was going to be an antagonist for this arc of the campaign, and I didn't want Paravex to be someone who would go over to their side at the drop of a hat, because I kind of, considered that option might be available, especially given how Ashiok's acted before in relation to the gods. I genuinely wanted to stick with the party unless, something really indefensible happened. And so I think this commitment to truth was a natural sort of foil to Ashiok's methods, which are all about illusions and shadow magic and nightmares and these constructs of the mind that aren't tangible, practical things that Paravex is interested in. Yeah, so I'm very happy with how Paravex ended up and my decisions.
So not only do you rebuke this Archon, but then your various confrontations with Ashiok, it's just so well portrayed.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy with this character, and I appreciate all the opportunities you gave for me to show their breadth.
Where does Tefranos come from?
So this is sort of a collaboration as far as her story. The 2.5 Archons that were discussed in this season come from the 3 primary Archon cards from the Theros set from Beyond Death. So that's the Archon of Falling Stars, which was Radanos, the Ashen Rider, which is Tefranos, and then the Archon of Sun's Grace, who was only sort of hinted at a few times.
And you named these?
Scala named Tefranos.
Yep.
And then I went from there.
Hidetaka Miyazaki named
Yeah, I was going to say you.
Yeah, well.
Oh, yeah.
Or actually, no, George R.R. Martin.
Yeah, technically. Yeah.
Something about we're not liable for copyright.
Yeah, something.
Oh, we are so far down that hole already.
Yeah, that's why we don't. Yeah. That's why there's a
TM,
Patreon.
Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unofficial.
Unofficial. But officially, Jimmy, talk about Gron this season.
Sorry, I just thought of something else. Wait, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Scala, did you see Thor: Love and Thunder?
I did not. I kind of want to, but I conceived of this character before Gore the God Butcher was a thing.
I figured that was the case, but there's like so many similarities there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that was I saw it over the weekend and I was like, that's uncanny.
Yeah, it's on my list, but I haven't gotten a chance to see it yet.
It was fine. It's no Ragnarok.
Jimmy, talk about Gron this season. How do you feel about what Gron went through and where he ended up? Culminating, of course, in our last couple episodes where Gron just got to grill.
So Gron has kind of always been a character who doesn't really have a proper place in this world. His entire youth was like this, fight to survive, wandering in the wastes, and then ends up wrapped up in all this stuff. And so he doesn't have like necessarily allegiances to factions. He's got Califex, and Califex has allegiances, but he kind of, I think of Gron as like a free thinker who doesn't really have all the facts. Like he kind of, he goes with whoever's closest to him, his friends, his companions. He's a defender. And so this season, meeting Paravex kind of introduced this whole new way of thinking about things before, because it used to just be, well, there's Califex, then there was Clix and Andromedy, and then he's got Mogus kind of haunting him constantly. Mm-hmm. All these different voices, but he doesn't really have his own point of view necessarily. And I do think that he is inching towards developing his own worldview, but he's not quite there yet, I don't think.
We'll get it in Pods of the Multiverse season 47.
Yeah. Mechanically, I'm loving where Gron is at now. Gron is just
the resilient feat.
Yes, well, the resilient feat, right? Because that was a major. Gron can swing this, whatever weapon. He's used all of the big weapons, right? He started with Mauls, and then he got Hargoth's Blood Axe of Fury, and now he's got great swords.
They're just all right.
I'm waiting for him to use a Kavatapi sniper rifle as a melee weapon. That'll be the last big weapon he has.
Exactly. That'll make a lot of sense. So, yeah, Gron could swing these weapons with advantage all day, but he's got major vulnerabilities in the wisdom and intelligence departments. And that became very, very clear in episode 2.
Well, I mean, a lot of those combats were control mechanics that led to you blowing a lot of rage and ending up pretty vulnerable in offensively, too.
Yeah, at least twice that I can think of in this campaign, I was going into combat with no rages. Because 4 is not a lot when you're in this campaign where you only get to long rest every other episode.
Yeah, and maybe go mad doing it. And Andy is nothing if not generous with his encounter tables.
Yeah, well, we never really saw any of the bad results of trying to rest.
For the resting, no.
Oh, man. And there were plenty of them. I'm almost sort of going back to any content you didn't get to do this season that you had planned. Fucking that madness mechanic, I kind of wish we got to use a couple more times, because it was just straight up the long-term madness table from the DMG. And some of those are brutal.
Yikes. All right. Well, I'm glad, because this is not the easiest campaign from like a survive it perspective.
Well, that's the thing, is like, from this side of the table, you know, I wanted to make the underworld feel treacherous.
Yeah.
But
Mission accomplished.
Yeah.
thank you.
You know that.
But I wanted to do it in more ways than just big numbers in combat. And as we've talked about, again, before on different table talks and things, you know, 5e is balanced only so far. And even towards the end of this campaign, I was starting to feel that, insofar as there is a limit to big numbers and brutally swinging opponents where you start getting diminishing returns.
Mm-hmm.
I think a good example being Daxos himself. That was a Planetar, 1-for-1.
Wow.
And it was doing, 60 damage a turn. And that's a pretty big stat block. Yeah. I mean, ancient dragons, other legendary beings with stat blocks. There's a ceiling that you start reaching where it's like, well, what do you do for random encounters? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I tried exploring other options for peril, and this madness mechanic was one of the ideas I came up with.
And I'll say, before we move away from that, also mission accomplished in painting it as a treacherous place. Another way I want to emphasize that is that, at least for me, when we got to Elysia, it felt truly like respite from literal hell. And I recognize Elysia as part of hell here, or the hells, but it was such a stark contrast. I felt safe as a player for the first time in basically the entire campaign.
No, I was really happy with the sort of survey of the wards of the underworld. I know we only really got to see Nirino for like a minute with Andromedy and crew, and we literally only saw Phileas from a distance. But, I mean, compared to the other three, I feel like there's only so much that can be said for the Ward of the Mundane and the Ward of, endless water, basically. Not to say that we won't see any of them ever again, so we'll see. Clicks.
Yeah, this was some of the most fun I've had role-playing, honestly. I mean, Alfonso is a character that overjoys me to play, and I think I have monologues as Illapel that I'm really proud of. But in totality, Clicks is someone that I'm just especially coming off of this arc of Theros. I'm proud of what I was able to do, because this is so different than the last season. I don't want to say Clicks is like the leading character, but Clicks acts a little bit like a leader and knows shit, which are two things I don't do well in D&D. Knowing things and leading. So it was really cool to do that, and it was extra challenging and fun to do it as someone like Clicks, who spent the first arc in season 1 lurking in the shadows, being a little edgelord prick. It was just cool. It was cool to be such a different character. A lot of Clicks' changes came between seasons, and I'd say that the arc for Clicks this season was really around whether or not cracks would begin to form in his character. Like, the character growth happened between seasons, and this was all about, are cracks going to form in that growth as a result of being around Paravex, being exposed to the underworld. And then, as we saw in the finale, being reunited with Andromedy, hot off the heels of like everything that went down with Elspeth, and seeing the horror that the gods have wrought, and seeing that Elspeth was the one that helped bring an end to it, like, super conflicted, right? Like, everything Clicks has been tied to this season as a result of really coming to adore and admire Andromedy is put to the test in the end of episode 11 and all of episode 12. And, to kind of get into character epilogues, as you can tell, it might mean Clicks is done. Like, this may have been it. I don't know. That final scene, which we'll get into we'll definitely talk more about the cliffhanger in a little bit here, but I will say that multiverse threats in the form of Ashiok have taught Clix that is a threat to fight back against. So maybe Clix isn't out the game entirely, but now more than ever, he very well might be.
I was pleased with all of the character work this season. As I said before, something I really wanted to hone in on and sort of push past all of the opacity of the world of Theros was like these individuals and their personalities and their reactions to things. And so with that in mind, why don't we go ahead and talk about the big moments in the back half of this campaign as far as what we experienced with this War of the Gods and interacting with the Planeswalkers that were on Theros.
I have a question that might just be something that I maybe just went over my head. Why did Heliod destroy the Pyrgnos? Or attempt to?
So, from my understanding, and our lore master can confirm or deny this, this sort of first attack was Heliod trying to destroy other gods' authority by erasing their histories from this location that literally embodies all of the oral and written history of Theros.
So, right. So Heliod wants to be the one god.
Yeah.
Or the leader of the gods.
Yeah. Both, either one, it sort of varies from time to time, but
it's extremely unclear because Beyond Death has no official story. But Andy has the gist of it. Yeah. Heliod's like, I will destroy the knowledge of all the other gods, so the people have no choice but to worship me.
Yeah, and that was his sort of big play.
Minor narcissistic tendencies from Heliod, just ever so
just a bit.
Be interesting to have a Theros campaign that takes place in a world where Heliod was successful. It's monotheistic.
I think I have an idea for the leading character. Icaros. Yeah, in terms of War of the Gods, pretty ambitious in terms of like just painting that picture. Pretty wild. I don't know enough about the lore to say much more than the fact that I just thought it was awesome. And it was really cool also to see other gods step in that didn't really get a mention, or that didn't get a lot of play, right? They got cursory mentions, but seeing some of these other gods come into an actual scene was great. And then also like what it's doing for the characters. I can't speak for Gron or for Paravex, but again, just to go back to Clix, Clix was in a place of not being an iconoclast anymore and trying to do right by his friend Andromedy and starting to develop a sort of respect for some of the gods, only to see it's just atrocious shit happening at their behest. And it's like, it's pretty wild. Like, put yourself in there, like, you're just chilling out on the streets and you see a fucking god just start doing some wild shit. That's tough. That's a tough moment to take in when you really think about the gravity of it. And I think it probably doesn't feel that way because it's written in the book, but like really insane move from a DM perspective. Like, I'm going to throw this at my players. Granted, in Theros, it is par for the course, but on a cosmological level, that's a brain melt moment for every character, or it should be.
Now, so you may have been intentionally vague about this, so don't feel like you need to tell us anything. But the gods at the end that were fighting, were there factions within the gods? Would there have been any that were on Heliod's side?
No.
It was all of the gods against Heliod.
Yes.
Gotcha. Because with some of those lair actions where we were getting hit with side effects by, god effects, it was a little unclear who those were targeted at.
Yeah. All of those were sort of meant to fall into three categories. One, the few strictly beneficial ones. Two, the ones that hit everyone, including your opponents. And 3, the ones that just happened to hit you. And those were, errant attacks, not necessarily, oh, these guys are helping Heliod. Sure.
The most surprising one for me was Keranos.
That
we just fully got hit by a Keranos attack.
Yeah. In hindsight, I probably would have said that the lightning was, striking everyone, because I think actually looking back on the thing, it was. But, yeah, I tried to use those not only to, sort of reintroduce some of these other names, but also to, obviously balance the enormous party that you guys had going into that finale.
Yeah. Well, and also a reminder of scale.
Yeah.
Of this combat.
Yeah.
Pretty fucking cool. It was super cinematic. It's great. In regards to all the Planeswalker shit, I mean, I'm glad you brought it up, because I want all of us to talk about it, because now we're getting into our return seasons, and the word multiverse is in the name of our podcast. So I mean, I love that we're doing it. There were some really clever callbacks to other seasons, especially the end of this episode, of episode 12 rather. I would say the same comments I made in regards to the characters. This is also brain melt shit. This is galaxy brain moment for a lot of these characters. Like, Gron and Clix looked into that portal and saw something that I don't think they would ever recognize as anything of this world. Like, how does a brain comprehend that moment? Fucking wild.
Andy did a really good job of explaining it. He said it was like Perforos's machines and tentacles, and it was, he used Theros language to describe. Will you tell us what plane that was, or is it kind of fuzzy?
This is now officially canon, so I don't feel like this is, spoilery or anything, but Ashiok goes to New Phyrexia.
Okay.
After leaving Theros.
But yeah, I mean, I guess we'll all probably be a little cagey about it, but I mean, at a glance, is it safe for me to say Jimmy Scala can expect more Planeswalker references and or fuckery in the seasons to come? I mean, we're waiting for Jace and yours, so probably.
Yeah, I mean, that's a part
that's known from season 2.
So here's what I'll say. At least compared to Ravnica, Theros is a world that's behind the curve as far as contact and interaction with the multiverse goes. Ravnica has dealt with planeswalkers and multiverse level threats a lot longer than Theros has.
Yeah. To the point where people in Ravnica have context for roughly what it is. Right? Is that accurate?
I mean,
enormous context.
Like those, like those are words that they say.
Like the most recent major event there was an invasion attempt by a planeswalker and a few of his planeswalker allies.
Pals.
Yeah. And there are, like a half dozen other Magic the Gathering worlds that I can just think of off the top of my head that are in similar situations, that have a lot of backstory dealing with this stuff that Theros doesn't. And so we're, sort of ebbing into, new lore, quote unquote, as far as Pawns of the Multiverse is concerned, where, Scala sort of started season 2, the first season of Ravnica, already there, already in the new lore. This is all off the dome. Whereas I wanted to give a little more context to Theros. I started the first season of Theros prior to the quote-unquote lore of Theros Beyond Death, because Theros Beyond Death, as Scala said, it's very loose and vague because there was no official story. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to play around with that because I feel like there's a lot more that can be explored with what's going on here. And so now we're crossing that threshold into, the new lore.
Was there a reason given that there's no story for that block of Theros? Because it seems strange for a setting that's all about stories.
There is a business reason, and I think that's purely it. Basically, War of the Spark was pretty much universally panned, and Theros had something of a misfortune of coming almost immediately after it in terms of the release cycle, when they were doing a bit of a changing of the guard in the story department, because War of the Spark was this really, like, I think tremendously well executed build-up. Like, Kaladesh, Ixalan, Amonkhet have great stories, and they just completely face-planted on the landing. And so they, fired the head of their story department, and it happened kind of right when Theros was supposed to have lore, which is a real bummer. But, as I'll say for this season, as someone who feels like that was missing, this was a great opportunity for me, and I'm sure Andy got the same thing out of it, to sort of play through this story that we didn't really get a full version of, and we get to actually, make it for ourselves and create that our ideal, or our potential version of those events for ourselves and actually exist within them.
And that's why we do this, isn't it?
I half joke when I say this, but I also don't. I really tried very hard not to make it just sound like a fanfic. Because, there's a fine line between, talking about established NPCs and characters and lore in the context of a D&D adventure, and then you cross that line and all of a sudden, well, it's just, some internet dork's thesis on what should have happened.
Yeah.
Jeppy, I want to respond to something you said a little while ago. I do think it's cool to connect worlds and everything, and with the MTG setting specifically, it is kind of a part of the world. It's almost expected. I also feel like the word multiverse can mean the opposite. It can mean a complete disconnection of worlds, parallel, stories that have nothing to do with one another.
Yeah, that's fair.
Am I alone in that, or?
No, I think that's a reasonable sort of assessment. Part of the fun of anthology series is there's no obligation. Sometimes there are Twilight Zone episodes that call back to other Twilight Zone episodes, and even in like some Stephen King novels, there's like hints of like a connected world, but there's no requirement that the worlds be connected.
I think those are great examples. Absolutely. I would agree.
That being said, I am open to whatever kind of multiverse fuckery we're trying to do.
We'll see.
I've got plans. That's all I'll say.
I will go on the record now and say I'm not planning on using the word planeswalker within the context of Eberron. I just don't feel like it doesn't feel, but anything can change. We'll see.
Well, already, a hematite found Wraithosite.
Well, that's because you said Fail Barrage was from Sean.
Yeah, exactly. He had to get back at me. Yeah, didn't take a planeswalker to bring those two worlds kind of together.
No, but those two are closer to being connected than with the MTG worlds, and we'll see. We'll see what kind of story we all collectively tell in the end.
Yeah. Why don't we go ahead and change gears here before we close things out and talk about our character epilogues, where everything was left and where we think Theros might be headed.
Go in order.
Oh, I guess that would be me first. So Paravex is kind of left to their own devices again, with Elspeth, their patron, being chased off-world by Klothys. They need to find some other ways of striking out at the gods, and they have heard that one of Eurymedes' students is out in Ereskos among the other iconoclasts, trying to raise a force that can confront the heavens, and they're going to go join it.
That's cool. And you think that these... I don't know that much about the iconoclasticism of the Leonin people. Do you think they have enough passion to really bring war on the gods. They're, they seem to be iconoclasts just because they don't have an allegiance to the gods, not because they are actively opposing them.
They got biscuits to make.
I'll say this. I think the perspective of the Leonin is very, broad. There are lots of different tribes and prides, so to speak, and some may be more receptive than others. But it may be, I think what Paravex is hoping is that, as with the fall of Xenagos, the war that Heliod started will serve as a catalyst to incite more people against the capricious tyranny of the gods.
One more question. Who's Paravex's next target?
Well, they made a promise to Cruor.
I think if Paravex could kill one god, it would be Phoenix first.
Wow.
There's a lot of people probably feel that way.
Because again, their commitment is to truth. And if they got a shot at any god, it would hopefully be Phoenix. But
and the irony is that would please so many more of the gods.
Yeah. Timuret's been trying for eons untold and has been unsuccessful, so good luck, Paravex!
Clix is next. I mentioned a lot of where Clix is at when I talked about Clix's character arc, so there probably isn't too much more to say there, really. I mean, because you asked another question, which is where do we think Theros is headed? I don't think anywhere fucking good, is my guess. And I think I said earlier, I alluded to it, like, time of recording, cards on the table, I don't know if Clix will come back. I don't know what we're going to do yet for that. And I wanted to end the season there for the tension of it and also just to be open to exploring new avenues when we come back for season 3 of Theros. Where Theros is headed will ultimately decide what I think feels right in regards to Clix sulking back off into the streets to live a life of anonymity or to come back into the fray and try to be a hero again. So I'll probably be DMing you, Andy, as we get close to recording season 3 of Theros, so I can decide if I need to roll a new character or not.
Direct messaging, not dungeon mastering.
It's kind of both. It's context.
Gran is reunited with Califax, and Califax is relieved of his duty. I think this is a turning point for both of them. And I'm not inside of Califax's head, but I do feel like neither Gran nor Califax have to now be completely aligned with Akros and whatever direction that's going in. We're kind of free agents now at this point. I do know that Califax, still a Lectoi, still has that bit of connection.
Mm-hmm.
But this could be maybe where Gran starts to assert a little bit more of an alignment, I would say.
Very cool.
Yeah. As far as where Theros is going, from inside Gran's head, I have no fucking idea.
Andromedy.
Well, Andromeda's back where they started, back where I left them, and I think that's a good place for them to be right now, especially with all the damage done by the War of the Gods. I think the Seal of the Titans needs a powerful guardian, but I think in terms of where the future is headed, both with that vision from beyond the veil and with the unraveling of destiny, I think Andromeda is very concerned about the future and may always they're devoted to Clothis, but maybe they will be put in a desperate position. And I don't know how they might act if they got to that point. And I'd be curious to find out.
I'm intrigued for that.
Very cool. Why don't we have some season favorite moments?
This is kind of a general one.
Yeah, we all know
what?
On the count of 3, we can all say the same answer.
I don't know. I'm not thinking what you're thinking. I have no idea.
Guest star reveal. That was fucking amazing.
Oh, yeah, that was great. Yeah, you're right. that was a highlight. I was going to say, generally, the voices. Andy's voices. Just like you just keep raising the game. Like,
thanks.
not only are you doing all of these different god voices very consistently, I will say. Also all these demons and all this shit, like just everybody's got a voice.
I would say 3, really 2, but 3 or 4 gods that really had a lot of dialogue this season. I was really happy with the voices I landed on, especially Erebos.
Yeah, Erebos' fucking great voice.
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
Can we get a shout out to Agademos?
Oh man.
Stadium Demon.
Oh man.
I love it.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, that was so good.
I love that he kept that tone of voice even
The
when we were
whole
just talking
time.
to him.
And you
The whole
regretted
time.
it. You
Okay, so
regretted
I
it.
don't think so. This is for Jeppy and Scala. I don't think either of you ever made this connection, but he's based on a character from a different, from not even Magic the Gathering, but
No, he's
he's
Grandmaster Vol. We talked about
he's a
this.
World of Warcraft character.
Oh my god, yeah.
He's from the what is that called? He's from the Theater of Pain.
Yeah. Yeah, he's theater. Yeah, definitely.
Soldiers of
Yeah.
Maldraxa!
Yeah, he's that guy. He's
Oh,
that guy.
good. Holy shit, I can't
Yep.
believe I didn't notice that. God,
Yeah,
fucking Theater of
so
Pain. We had a
there's a
couple
lot
of
of-
scuffed runs in that one.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean, that's what the Stadium of Dishonor was. But anyways,
I'm going to name my second favorite, and then I'll go. My real quick nod to, I feel like Jimmy just fucking nailed the delivery of it, picked up what Andy was putting down, and it's when he says Gron has one word going through his head, Hargot. I thought that was so fucking well done. It added so much drama, tension. It was so fucking good, and it was great.
There was some realness in that too, because it didn't
Yeah.
occur to me until you saw Lyukar. I was just like
that whole
oh.
sequence, I
It
was
was
like,
so organic and
fucking
amazing.
so good.
So
And we had
good.
just fought Atris, so I know you're not above, putting a more like a powered up previous boss in front of
Yeah.
us. So
Yep. Yeah.
I think my favorite honestly goes to we recorded most recently, which was Clix's epilogue. I really wanted, as we got towards the end of episode 12, and I was really starting to get this full picture painted of what the gods are capable of. It's almost like the fucking Avengers, right? It's like, oh, they're saving the day. They're destroying everyone's cars. This is a nightmare. This is not good. And even though it's kind of jokey, but like it is a real kind of
Yeah.
nasty underbelly of what the heroic gods are doing, including the devilish Heliod. Like, so I knew that Clix was not going to be in a good place, and I really wanted to try and nail painting a relatively ambiguous picture of he might be out of this. This might be too much, and he's done. And I really like where I landed. Something really right in the middle, something pretty ambiguous, but I think Clix, in spite of that ambiguity, articulated where he was at in that final scene beneath the tree really well. I'm really happy with how it came out.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's hard for me to pick a single moment. I really, really loved playing Paravex, and there are just a lot of individual scenes that stick out for me that I was just so pleased with. I generally don't like to toot my own horn. But
Oh, come on, go ahead. We know what you're gonna say.
I mean, yes,
I don't, but-
I'll say it. The scene with Eurymedes was just I was not
S-tier acting.
I was
S-tier.
not expecting that to come out, and I was just like, it was very raw, and it was very it was kind of silly that I was like, I don't know. After the fact, it felt silly that I was still doing this like choky, ashy voice, but I'm very pleased with that scene. But I think it rests upon a lot of character work that I did throughout the season that I'm very happy with, and I think that was the culmination of the consistency of Paravex's character.
I want to give honorable mention to, there's a scene in, I think it's in episode 2, where Paravex just fucking slits the throat of a follower of Heliod. it's just so intense. And it really makes a statement of who this person is. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty intense. DM, give us your favorites.
All right. So, unofficial. The Radanos fight. I mean,
Yeah.
it was just so much fun.
It was good.
It was so
good.
much fun. And like revealing the the meteor crash mechanic.
That was so good.
Just
Anyone that
talk
listens
about
that's
an
played
epic
Elden Ring
brawl.
is gonna feel that. Like,
Yeah. And having the guests there. And even the way, I mean, that whole episode unfolded. I mean, Santana especially they all brought such dynamic characters. But he had this background that I just sort of took and was like, this fits the season perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
Yes,
gonna
it does.
use this. Like,
yeah.
but they were also great, and it really did add so much flavor to the vibe I was
Yeah.
trying to set.
We got some cool friends, I would say. We got pretty cool friends.
Thank you, friends. Other things off the dome, I mean, yes, the Euripides scene. The first set of nightmares
Yeah.
after leaving the stadium, I was particularly proud of. And I really enjoyed playing with you individually, like Gron and Clix. For all of them, I didn't have like a set dialogue script. I was really going just off the cuff with a lot of those interactions, and just the direction that each of them took felt like really meaningful for each of the characters. And also really informed like a lot of how I would play a lot of Ashiok's other scenes. Those were like fact-finding scenes, basically. Who are you guys? Are you threats? All of these sorts of things. And I mean, really all of the Ashiok stuff I just enjoyed so much. Even the Atris stuff, way back in episode 2, I was like, I'm not a blue mage, but sometimes it can be pretty fun. So it was really fun.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of Blue Mage,
Speaking of blue mage,
I feel like our next DM definitely has some blue tendencies. Can we confirm we're going back to Ravnica, Scala?
Yes, we are returning to Ravnica. We're doing a return to Ravnica.
Hell yeah.
return to Ravnica.
Let's want to dip into this trailer and then we'll talk a little bit about it.
Okay. We haven't recorded any of this yet.
We haven't. Hell yeah, that trailer. Super exciting. Feels good every couple months to pretend to be excited about a trailer we haven't recorded yet. And here we are.
I'm so glad to be DMing again. I could not contain my excitement and my enthusiasm for getting back to these characters and this world that I love so much. And what I will say about this season is it's going to be a dark one, I think.
Hell yeah, I love that shit.
The things are going to accelerate. It's very much intended to be a second act. Bad things will happen that will be beyond your control, and it's going to be up to you to make the best of these bad situations.
I can't wait to see that manifest because that's very tonally different from the first season of Ravnica. I'm really excited for you to DM. That is not a value judgment on you, my good friend Andy. It's been a lot of fun.
I'm excited too.
I am excited to play in the Scala sandbox once again. It is going to be great. Less excited to play Illapel, but excited to be in Ravnica.
Fuck Illapel.
Hell yeah. Fuck Illapel.
Yes, fuck Illapel in the chat.
Yeah, let's throw one of those out there. After you finish this season wrap table talk, please give us a fuck Illapel in the chat. We'll appreciate it. Also, we should get a counter going for how many times any of us say fuck off to each other, because Ravnica is the place where all of us say fuck off to each other. Notice that.
That's true.
Icewind Dale is where we say fuck you, Jeppy. Ravnica is where we just broadly say fuck off.
So, a second season of Theros and a fifth season of Pods of the Multiverse in the can. I had so much fun.
Hell yeah.
And I hope you all did too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A blast.
100%.
Yeah.
See you all in Ravnica.
Indeed.
See you all in Ravnica. And that's Table Talk.
That's Table
That's
Talk.
Table
Table
Talk.
talk.